All right, I am Laura Romaine. I am the Workers' Comp Program Consultant at the Texas Association of School Boards. My job in working with our members is in helping them understand workers' comp from an employer's side of the house. It's like, what does the law require of you? And joining me here is Jennifer.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Ruthas. I am one of 5 claims managers at the Texas Association of School Boards. I'm joining Laura today for the presentation.
So the reason I asked Jennifer to be here is for a lot of reasons, because number one, she can kind of hold me up sometimes when I kind of fall. But secondly, because when we talk about workers' comp, there's many different areas, and it's very important to know what your task is. She's got an entirely different job and an entirely different deadlines than you as an employer. So it kind of makes it easier to see. Before we get into this, I do have to say this. I am celebrating my 28th year with TASB Risk Management, but 2 years prior to that, so it's officially 30 working for school districts and all of our lovely members throughout the state of Texas. But Region 1 did probably the nicest thing to me today I think I've ever had. They reserved parking spots for us. Like, no, I've already Instagrammed it and I've sent it to everyone and their brother. I cannot tell you, like emotionally, I almost lost it. So my gosh, thank you. The Valley, I always loved you, but you guys, that was amazing. Okay, Jennifer, let's get into this.
We're going to get started with some real life scenarios. So you have an employee, there's a fire drill going on, you're going down the stairs, you see one of your employees trip, they don't fall, but they trip. So when you get outside, you walk up and you say, hey, are you okay? I saw that you fell. Everything going okay? And they say, oh yeah, I'm fine. So come to my office when we get back in the building. Let's fill out a fresh report of injury. No, I'm good. I'll go see my own doctor if I need to. I don't want to do the workers' comp thing. What's the problem with that? Is that right? Do we just let them go on? Who can tell me what you do in that situation? Fill out a report.
So she says, hey, I don't want to file anything. Just don't worry about it. I'll let you know if something comes of it. So let's talk about what just happened. First of all, the employee refused to fill out paperwork. Now that's common. All of us, we were like, oh gosh, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. I'll be okay. I'll see my own doctor. It wasn't the employee's job to fill out the paperwork. Did you know that? So while you as an employer can have your own reports, sure, that you require your employees to fill out, the state says when it comes to an injury on the job or an incident that you know of, it was the employer's task to create a record, not the employee, okay? She says she wants to use group insurance. She doesn't want to see a doctor. She don't want to turn it in. Well, you know what? As a political subdivision, you can't reject workers' comp, neither can your employee. Okay, so employees do not have political subdivisions do not have the right to reject the act and say that they wish to use their own doctor. So that's something we often forget and that we often don't even understand clearly. So it's important to remember school districts, college, anyone who's a political subdivision, you can't reject workers' comp. So the law says once an employee or someone acting on their behalf tells their employer or you become aware of it, your job is to create the record of it. Okay, that's known as a first report of injury, the DWIC-1. All of this is exactly the same thing. It is what was reported, what was seen, what is known, okay? It is not admission that it happened, nor that it is covered. And that is important to remember because a lot of people will tell me, I didn't file that because I know for a fact it didn't happen. It's not covered. That's ridiculous. I don't care what they're saying. And I'm like, well, yeah, but that's not your job. Your job as an employer is to create the record, okay? You create it, you file it, you copy it with the employee. That is required by law. You have to copy the record to the employee along with their rights and responsibilities. which is a 2-page document the state has created for you. And that is available in 5 different languages. On the notice that I sent you, I was talking to the young lady earlier, we have an attachment that's going to really kind of round up everything I talk about today. There are links on it that you can actually get to the documents I'm talking about. Now, some of them are protected. And if you're not with TASB Risk Management, unfortunately, I can't help you on that. But the rights and responsibilities is a state form, and it'll take you directly to that. So you're required to give them that. And then you're going to file that first report of injury when it meets reporting requirements. So just because you have to create the record of it doesn't mean that you automatically have to send it to your carrier. It means you have to have a record. You have to keep that record for 5 years from the date in which it occurred, right? And then you purge on the 6th and 7th year. But that's important to remember. You have to keep that kind of record keeping. So you report it when they lose 1 or more days of time due to the injury. Hear what I'm saying, folks. 1 or more days of lost time. It doesn't matter if you paid them. If they didn't show up for the shift, they were out of work for 1 day. That means from the day they called in, you had 8 days to file it with the state. Okay. If they seek medical care because someone's going to have to pay the bill, you definitely have to send that in, even if they don't. And if it's an occupational illness or disease, and that's one like carpal tunnel is the most common one we used to see because it was from doing your job, a repetitive task. We don't see them quite so much anymore. It's a reason for that because of ergonomics. We don't have people doing the exact same thing, the exact same way. We've got aids to help us. But the 8th day of when it meets those requirements. So in Jennifer's case, where that woman tripped, kind of walked away a little wonky, right? She had to create a record that day, right? But she didn't have to turn it over to the carrier. She just needed to create the record for the record keeping purposes for the state. But in, like a couple of days later, she called in and said, I'm going to see a doctor. Then it's 8 days from when she called in to go see the doctor that you turn it over. And that's calendar days. State doesn't count in business days, okay? Calendar days. So an occupational disease, actually, I talked to you about this. It's from actually doing one, carpal tunnel syndrome. The big one that everyone talks about is COVID, not so much anymore because we've all kind of clarified what the situation is with COVID. It is an ordinary disease of life. It's like the flu. Somebody calls in with the flu. You don't think to ask them, is that workers' comp? No, because we all know even if we got it at work, work didn't place us at any greater risk. Same thing with COVID-19. But you do want to be aware that when an employee does actually have COVID and they demand that it should be covered by work, and this doesn't have to necessarily be COVID. They can come in and say they got cancer and it was because they were working with products at work, okay? Any disease of life that an employee says, I've got it and it's because of work. Typing up that report, sending it on. Jennifer, that's your headache, not mine, okay? Because that's what you're required to do. So, but it has to meet both of those requirements. There is one exception and it's a big one. Police officers, first responders, okay? Not security guards, but any, officer, yeah, police officers. SRO. Thank you. Those must be reported. So if your SRO is calling in and they're sick with COVID, that needs to be reported because they do have a separate part of the law for them. Okay. All right, Jennifer.
So real life scenario number 2, employee tells campus secretary they were injured last year. The secretary points to notice 6 and states it's too late to report it. For those of you that don't know what a notice 6 is, those are required forms that you should have on your campus that actually tell your employees who the carrier is and the timeframes to report an injury.
So your mandatory notices that you have to post, there's one, notice 6, lower left-hand corner, says someone, the employee or someone acting on behalf have to report within 30 days. That is true. But it is not that supervisor's job to say no. The employer never says no. Never, ever, ever. does the employer say no to workers' comp? Once it is reported, you throw it to her. She says no. She investigates. You say, let's get the form. What are we doing? Okay. So that 30-day notice was a sign for the employee. That wasn't the supervisor's sign, unless he was acting as an employee, telling his supervisor. Sometimes we read signs, sometimes we ask questions that are meant for other people. And what I mean by that is if you call Jennifer and say, Jennifer, is that going to be covered? And she says, no, probably not. Well, that's what you asked her. Is it covered? She said, no. You didn't ask her, do I have to do something about it? So she answered the question correctly, but you asked the wrong question. Your question should have been, what do I do? That's the difference. Okay.
So a month later, the employee contacts Division of Workers' Comp. They then notify school administration, hey, we need a first report of injury. We don't have anything on file for this person. What happens then?
Administration says, hey, we didn't know about this. Is the district late in reporting? Yes, they are, because the clock started ticking when the supervisor knew. All of us have statutory obligations, and we didn't even know we had a part in the plan. Okay, but the employee has to tell their supervisor, management, or someone reasonable to report. That means secretaries, nurses, principals, supervisors. These folks, it's just like when you hear about child abuse. You can't stop the train. You got to throw it to the proper authorities. So train your reasonable reports. Make sure they understand. Because in this case, yes, the district is going to have to buy the claim probably, because they didn't file a position. They didn't file a report so she could file the position and say employee was late in reporting. So that's why it's always important to know what your responsibilities are. We've talked about the reasonable reports. Make sure that they understand when they know it. There's none of this, I don't want you to tell anyone. And I say this all the time. Everyone always says that at the end of the sentence. I wish the world knew that had to be the first thing you said, because then you could stop them and say, I cannot promise you that. But yes, it goes forward, because it's just like, and I always say it, child abuse. What would you do? So train them, make sure that they have the information. They don't need to, the thing about training reasonable reports, everyone's so afraid of this, but it helps them if they understand they have a point. And they may never touch it, but once every blue moon, that's okay. They just needed to know that they played a part, and that where do I go to get the information? And it's quick little packets. It's very simple to do that.
Laura, let's talk about nighttime injuries though. What about nighttime injuries, and where do people go for that?
Yeah, that's a big thing. So you should have, we do actually, for our members who are in our, we do have a packet about, like I have one for the FROI administrator. That's the person who keeps the records and files with us, right? With the carrier. But you should have a packet for all of the nurses, campuses, principals, those people, so that they know what to do. And it says what to do in the job. Do this, fill this out, push it forward, push it to the administrator, right? But what Jennifer's talking about is, what about those folks who are working at night? What about those folks who are working during the summer when nobody is there? They should at least have some medical forms. We'll show you, there's 2 forms, but they should have a basic understanding of, if this happens, then do this. You can't leave it to the point where someone's standing there without a fingertip and they're by themselves and they're like, I don't know what to do. So you have to help your employees know. So it's sort of like to break the glass. Go here if you've got a problem. So good question. Jennifer, talk to them about what the adjuster's responsibilities are.
So when the adjusters receive the claim, they have 24 hours to make their contacts, and they do that with the physicians. They do that with you guys to gather all of their information, and then they'll also reach out to the injured worker. We also want to make sure that during the investigation, they're getting all the information that they need to make that proper decision on whether the claim is compensable or not. If the employee is in course and scope, are they at greater risk? When I say greater risk, we get bug bites sometimes. Maybe a custodial person was bitten by something, they were cleaning out a closet, that might be something that we would accept. But it might not be something that we accept if someone just walked in and said, hey, I think something bit me. I mean, it just depends on the facts of the claim. So employees at greater risk, those are ones that we would consider. They also will request information from you, video information, witness statements, to make sure, again, that they're getting all the information that they need to make the correct decision on the claims.
So don't assume that your adjusting staff knows. You really want to make sure they have the information. But remember, it's their job. Now, I want to be clear. You know it's bogus, you're angry, you're whatever. You're throwing it to her and you're going, what are you doing? What are you doing about this? What are you going to do? Why are you doing that? I don't understand. That doesn't make any sense, Jennifer. That's okay. But she's still got a job to do. She's got an investigation, and people love to ask me questions, and they always get very frustrated with me because I won't put it in writing. Or if I put it in writing, it's very vague because of this. Workers' comp is not black and white. There is no yes or no. You heard what she kept saying, the facts of the accident. I am sitting here and a bug crawls across me and bites me right here. Is that covered? She's going to ask 1,000,001 questions. Was there an infestation? Was there, if there was regular, a very clean, open environment that's regular bugs spraying for and everything else, I am at no greater risk than any other human on the planet from being bitten by a bug. I probably won't, but that janitor cleaning out a filthy closet that is infested, that's a different story. So don't expect basic yes or no's. If you give us all of the facts, then maybe we'll certainly give a position then. So how do you answer the employee? If you're not supposed to know and you aren't, how do you answer the most common questions people ask you? Is it covered by workers' comp? Just like you want to call me, your employees are going to go into you and say, here's the following situation. Is this covered? Your response is, I don't know. I sat through a stinking hour of the training and I still don't understand what that is. But I do know we've got to push this forward. So you're never saying yes or no, no matter how crazy it is. And sometimes, let me tell you folks, my favorite, somebody who had West Nile virus and they were bit by a mosquito. I don't know how they low jacked that mosquito and knew where it came from, but they did. You're just simply going to say, I don't know, but we're filling out the forms. An adjuster will contact you. They will let you know whether or not it's covered, but I can't tell you. Okay.
So this next one's my favorite. We get this a lot. Should I see a doctor? I think of my kids when I see this. Everybody is an adult. If you need to see a doctor, then you need to see a doctor. That's not your decision to make for them. That is their decision. If they feel like they need to see someone, then they need to make an appointment with one of our alliance physicians, if you're with TASB, to be checked out. And then that information will come to the adjuster and they'll make their decisions from there.
We actually have some members who just sort of automatically want to force an employee to go see a doctor. Well, the truth of the matter is, if you were just at home and these little incidents happen, would you go see a doctor? Probably not. You wouldn't even think twice about it. There's no, I mean, if an employee is sitting there, he has lost consciousness. There is a reason to believe this person needs treatment right now. Okay. So yes, in that case, as an employer, you don't think they can be safe or whatever, you're going to send that employee to the doctor. But otherwise, no, if there's no reason to suspect they can't safely do their job, we are none of us medical professionals that I know of, so we can't make those decisions. Let the employee make the decision and just tell them, I don't know. You do what you need to do, but you must see an alliance or network provider if you go. So always report if they collapse at work for any reason. You have a heart attack, they're taken away by ambulance. I hope you're calling us and you're saying that. Now, because we're going to ask questions about that. Did they hit the ground? The heart attack, ordinary disease of life. But if I happen right here and I fell and hit this table, there's going to be injuries to my head or whatever, that would be considered workers' comp.
And let's talk about that a little bit more, because this does come up a lot. People don't realize, we actually had a couple of people call us after the last training and file reports. there's really two pieces to that. So if somebody is taken away in an ambulance, they've had a heart attack, or maybe they had a seizure, they didn't fall, they didn't hit themselves, they were just disoriented, taken away by an ambulance, that still needs to be filed with us. More than likely, something like that would probably be denied. But if there's injuries from the fall, whenever they have the seizure, they go down, they hit their head, like Laura said, or they break their ankle, whatever the case may be, those are injuries from the fall, and that is normally covered. So that's the difference between the two, but they both still need to be reported.
In addition to that, the first responders have come, they've taken your employee. There's a good chance that someone's going to bill. So you want to make sure that everybody is clear. She'll file a position on what is and isn't covered, and then everybody can bill properly to the proper coverage.
To be clear, those ordinary conditions of life, the seizures, heart attack, all of that, those would normally be denied. Even if there were injuries from the fall, we wouldn't cover the other, but we would cover the injuries from the fall.
You just kind of parcel it out, saying this is covered, this isn't, here we go. So anytime an employee asks the question, I hope if you took nothing else back from today, is that if anyone ever asked you, is it workers' comp, you just went, I don't know. I don't know. Because that's your get out of jail free card. Every time you answer that one, it's just not a good idea. And anytime they connect an injury with work, it was either caused by work or they were at work and it was aggravated by work. So you do need to learn to listen to employees. An employee coming in and saying, I have a back problem, there is no reason for you to think they have reported workers' comp, right? No one's going to think that. But if they come in and they're like, my back is really killing me, I mean, my God, at some point you do have to say, I'm sorry, but why are you telling me this? Do you think this is why do you think it's work related? But once they connect it, you have to create the record. So real life scenario 4.
Employee exhausts their leave due to workers' comp injuries. When their child gets sick, he goes and complains he was forced to use all his leave. Will the district have to reimburse the leave?
Anybody want to take this one? No. So he has a workers' comp injury. He is off of work. As I hope most of you may or may not know, workers' comp is not a paid leave. It is an absence, but it is not a paid absence by the employer, right? If you are injured, you will either use your available leave or you can get workers' comp benefits. And in some cases for offsetting, you can get both, but that's another story. The only difference between workers' comp and a regular absence is this. An employee has to be given the opportunity to say, yes, I want to use leave. No, I don't. In this case, the employee said, they made me use my leave. He's going to get his money back. If you can't prove they had the choice, and certainly if you're, which I have seen it, policy dictates they have to use it, then they're paying, you're paying, and nobody's getting money back. Okay, so you have to have the proof of the leave election. It's available at HR services. If you're a member with us, of course, I can send you packets with all of these forms that we're talking about. But it is important to know that you do have to explain that workers' comp isn't a form of leave. I know a lot of people get upset about that. The employee has to choose it, and then you keep a record. Now, equally important is the second you know, there, because remember, everybody's got timelines. Employees got timelines, employers, you have your own, and she has hers. And you know what? They don't support each other. So she's going because she can get fined. She's rushing to get her stuff done as quickly as possible. And you've got your own deadlines going. So you want to make sure you tell her, Jen, he wants to use 10 days of leave. It's going to pay through this date. You got to make sure you're letting her know. But remember that FMLA, all other benefits and protections, they run concurrently. They start at the beginning of the absences. So that's why your organization needs to make sure everybody who is in on this is working together. Have you alerted payroll? Have you alerted HR? Who knows? Who needs to know? Because you need to make sure that everybody is taking care of things. You can't adjudicate leave later. You got to go. You got to take care of all of this now. And make sure that you're reporting not only the dates that you will pay, and you can't wait until you've paid it. Because if you wait until you pay out the leave, she's already gone and she's paid. And now they've got 170% of what they earned. No one's coming back to work. So you want to make sure that she is alerted to that. So follow your policy. This is what I kind of mentioned earlier about offsetting, non-offsetting. Your DEC or DEB, local, not legal, will advise you of what your policy is. And this policy tells you how to pay the leave they elected to use. So for example, most of our members are non-offsetting, which basically means if the employee said, I want to use 20 days of leave, you started paying the 20 days of leave, and then on the 21st day, she picks up. But if you're offsetting, I'm very sorry for you, but she will pay 70%. You will use the 20 days to make up the difference between what they would have earned and what she paid. And that means a weekly reviewing the TIB payments, making sure you're adjusting, because it's not a standard fee. It's going up and down. So that's a whole nother course we won't get into, trust me. So, but I do often find members who have a policy that says they will do this, but they actually do the other. Make sure your policy and practice are one and the same. If you are an offsetting member, you will pay offsetting. And if you are non-offsetting, the same. But make sure that that's always the same. Okay, and this is what we talked about on the offsetting. And if you do, and like I said, a lot of the things that I talk about, if you email me, I can see what I can send you on this, because we do have some information on it. Okay.
So real life scenario number 5, member has a non-offsetting policy. They pay 100% salary while the employee is off on assault leave and inform workers' comp carrier that no TIBs are due.
Assault leave is a big deal right now. Assault leave is the only time your policy doesn't matter. Okay. So in this case, it is a mistake. The statute, we've got.
So the Texas Education Code 22.003B actually supports an offset for assault leave. So the adjusters will start their benefits, again, pay 75%, and then the assault leave is offset, offset with the assault leave and pay the difference. We have some members that have in the past said, no, we pay 100% assault leave. Well, by law, we still have to pay that 70 or 75%. So again, there's no incentive to come back to work if somebody's getting 170% of their pay. I wouldn't come back to work. So on the assault leave, just know that you do offset. You don't pay 100% if somebody is off of work and we're paying them benefits.
And a lot of times we'll hear of members who have asked for money back from employees. I will always tell you, never, that's a very dangerous situation. You want to always kind of be aware of. But TIBs are always required to be paid first. And then the assault leave is used to make up the difference. There is an HR services, an article online on assault leave. We have videos and all kind of information out there for you. So I would refer you to HR services. They have some excellent information on that. There is a couple of new leaves, and actually these aren't as new, but there is a mental health leave and a COVID pay leave that was recently came out. Those do need to be offset with TIBs. I just want to be aware, because this is a whole nother story and it could take up a lot of time no one has right now. But make sure if you are paying for these leaves that you're checking in with your adjuster to make sure that they are being offset against each other. Sometimes they will. For example, and sometimes they won't, because like for COVID leave, if one of your police officers had 5 days of COVID leave, but it was only for exposure, he did not have it, that's not offset. You will pay the 100% and go on. But if they did have it, they were missing time and it was covered, you would offset. So just kind of wanted to put that in the back of your mind. One of the things I was talking about earlier about is being careful about asking your, and first of all, if we overpaid it, if your adjuster overpaid it, it is the adjuster's duty to get the money back if it is legal. If you overpaid, you go get your money back, but you don't take credit because she overpaid. Get the difference? You can't ask the employee to come give you money because she overpaid in the TIB benefits. That's super important. Everybody's money stays in everybody's pot. Okay, that's your lane. But remember, if this person started losing time due to workers' comp and no one bothered to notify the proper authorities like payroll, like mark them as leave without pay right now or whatever. This is an employer's rights and responsibilities. And I want to draw attention to this paragraph. This is by the state. It's out there for you. And I think there's a link on that page. If you just continue doing salary and you forgot to take the leave, to dock them or take the leave or whatever, you can't go back and get the money because according to the rights, and I'm not going to say can't. I'm never saying definitively. I'm always saying check with your counsel, but there will be an issue. If you continued salary because you just didn't take the time to stop or start it properly, because the state says it was the employer's job to do so. So just kind of wanted to advise you of that. All right, first report of injury starts the claim. Things happen that the state requires you to inform them of. And we passed in front of ponchos, but y'all, ponchos with the flags that you used to raise, that's PANCH. We passed a PONCH yesterday and got a big fight over who had the flags that you used to raise to bring food. None of you probably are old enough to know this, but anyway, the supplemental report of injury is when you raise the flag. So if the first report of injury said no lost time, but then they started losing time or they came back to work, you have 3 days to file a supplemental. Okay, so just remember that whomever is filing for your organization needs to be on top of this. You got to make sure everybody's letting them know, hey, that person came back to work. You can't wait a week because you got 3 days to tell the state. If they resign, terminate, retire, or they have reduced pay, for example, they're working half days because they're on modified duty, then every 10 days you need to file one to say, okay, last week they worked 20 hours and they earned this amount of money. But you have to remember these dates. It's a multi-purpose form. And again, on that paperwork that I sent you, it has all the information on what you fill out for this reason or that.
And this is a priority form for the adjuster because the benefits that are paid out with workers' comp are paid weekly. So those are weekly checks that are going out. So the sooner they know about somebody resigning, somebody was terminated, somebody returned back to work, full duty, light duty, the quicker they can stop those benefits and avoid any overpayments on that file.
The wage statement is the last form. We won't get into it, but basically know that it is due if the employee is out 8 or more days, or if an employee, if the adjuster and or an attorney or the state asks for it, you have 30 days to turn that in to them. It's the earliest of. There are 2 wage statements in the state of Texas. Colleges, educational service centers, they will do the DWC-3, employer's wage statement, which everybody in the state of Texas uses. School districts must use a 3SD. And I will tell you, think about what I just told you. If you were the only employer in the state of Texas with your own wage statement, the first thing you need to know is it is not about how you pay that employee. I don't want to know your pay periods. I don't want to know what their paycheck says. I need to know, how did they earn the money? Got a whole nother document on that. Contact me. I can help you out on that one. But it's a very complicated form. It's also required periods. Not, you have to adhere to what the state has defined as the proper reporting periods, not your pay periods. It's a very complicated form. So just know about that. We are coming in. I do want to point out one thing is that if we do get a wage statement that is invalid, the adjuster is required by law to reject it and tell you it's invalid. So if, for example, that employee only worked 180 days, you reported 13 weeks of the exact same earnings, I know immediately that's impossible because you don't have 13 weeks in a row that anyone at 180 days earns the same amount each week. So they are required by law to reject it. And trust me, it is the most unpopular job to reject a wage statement. And so they hate it so much, they send it to me to do. And I don't like them for it either. So
So I do want to touch on the 30 days. The law does state that you have 30 days to file the wage statement. I will tell you, you'll get calls from day one from the adjuster requesting that. And the reason that's important to point out is because, again, during their investigation, they're getting factful information. They're wanting to make sure that they're paying these people correctly and timely. We get audited by the state. They want to see all the records. So again, you'll get those questions from day one. The law states that you do have 30 days, but again, the adjusters are wanting to make sure that they're paying timely and accurately. So there's no overpayment or underpayment.
okay, so I actually, a reminder, you are subject to fines up to $25,000 per day per occurrence. Are they going up to that? No, but we all know how tight money is. So it's important to be aware and have good practices and procedures so that you're on top of things. I did get this one this week, and I asked her if I had permission to use it because I think it's a perfect example of a lot of the things that we deal with. She says, I had an employee report when she left school yesterday. She stepped off the curb and felt something pop in the back of her left knee. She told someone in the office, they advised her to tell me that she needed to report it, but she said, I didn't fall or step wrong. Everything looked clear around me. It was just weird. I kind of felt something in my knee, and I don't think I'm going to see a doctor. Her question was, do I file? Anybody? I see some shaking heads. Okay. Yes, she absolutely creates a report. It's an incident. It happened at work. Do y'all know that the thing about checking in and out, whether or not they're on the clock, does not determine whether or not someone is in course and scope. Okay. So remember, she has different definitions than you. And if they're on your premises, it's reportable. So yes, she had to create a record. Did she have to file it? You're correct. She did not have to file it because she did not lose time and she is not seeing a doctor. Okay. Once she does, she's got to file it with the carrier, but she had to create the report. Yes, ma'am. What if they on their own Thank you. So her question was, what if they didn't tell anyone and just went to the doctor on their own? Don't take someone else's headache. I love that question. If they never told you, you didn't know, you couldn't do anything about it. The issue is the moment your work begins. So you get where I'm coming from? If she went to see the doctor on her own and then 30 days later told you about it, then it started ticking the day you first knew. So everything is about when you knew. So you want to educate your employees, all employees. This is how you educate them on workers' comp. It's very easy. If you were injured at work or you think that you were injured at work, please advise your supervisor, the nurse, the secretary, whomever. Let them know who to report to. We ask you report it immediately. And if you seek any treatment for a workers' compensation injury or illness, you must seek treatment with an alliance or network provider. Boom, we're done. Thank you very much. Make sure it's on your intranet or whatever so that they know where to go. But then you have that separate training for those reasonable reports. Okay. But look at what she does in this statement. She talks about, she stepped off the curb. She told someone they advised. She's trying to figure out if this is covered. Because she says, well, nothing happened. That's not, she did a great job. She gave us a lot of information. We're going to go with it. But remember, I immediately stopped her and said, don't worry about whether or not it's covered. Because that's her headache. Okay. Her job, she did her job. She reported it. I love this question. There's so many things in there. Hey, anybody else see one other issue that came up in this? Anyone? Can you see where something failed to happen? I loved that they went to the office and someone told her to come to me. The office was great. They knew what they had to do. They knew this was the administrator. They had to send that person to the administrator. There's one step they forgot. What if she forgot to go to the administrator? What if the employee just took it upon herself to leave it right there? The office had to tell the employer. There's no adults working for you as far as that's concerned. If he comes to you and you have to tell, and you tell him to go to her, you tell her, hey, I just sent him to you. Did he come see you? Do you have the information? Because if he said, nah, I don't feel like doing it, did she know? You're running a relay race. Hand off the baton or you're going to lose. And the employee is never the holder of the baton. Once he told you, he was out the race. So
I'll tell you, one other question that would come up with an adjuster would be, where were they? What curb were they stepping off? We had a claim this last week. One of the teachers went across the street to a 7-Eleven to get some coffee before she went into work. She was actually stepping off the sidewalk there and she tripped and fell. So it was across the street from the campus. So we got the call and they said, do we report this? Because it happened at the 7-Eleven, didn't happen here. We went ahead and told them to report it. But if it's off campus at the 7-Eleven, it's probably not something that's going to be covered. Again, depends on the facts, but.
The protections, remember, everybody is protected when the adjuster files a position. So you want to make sure you're handing it over to them. Okay. But a reminder about this, if they're on your property. Now, if it was a teacher who came in because y'all were having a fair and she came in with her family to take part in the fair, right? And she was there solely on her own time and she tripped and fell in the parking lot, we don't have an issue. But if she was required to go work at the fair, we have an issue. Okay, if she was there to work. The other thing you have to remember is if your employee is on your premises, you need to be clear about this. So for example, a teacher comes in over the summer, volunteer. The principal says, hey, if anybody who needs access, let me know if you need access to go clean your room or do whatever you want to do. Teacher comes in over the summer, she trips and falls while she is decorating her classroom. Report or not? Big time. And then they said, well, we will have the employee sign to hold harmless. No, because no one can write a form that says we will ignore the law. Okay, so the speed signs are there for a reason. We can't just say, for today only, we will be going 90 miles an hour. No, thank you. That doesn't work that way. So no hold harmlesses. If they are furthering your business, they are there. So the other option is if you don't want to cover your employees when they do these things, just simply say, our campus is closed over the summer. Thank you all. We'll see you in the fall. But you can't have it both ways. You've got to make sure your employees are taken care of because that's what workers' comp is. I always say this, workers' comp is a statute. It's a law. We can't pick and choose what we will and won't follow. So with that said, questions from any of y'all. We do have a couple, if y'all have a few minutes, we have a couple of things, but I'd rather take your questions if anyone has any.
Good morning. We've got a couple of questions in Zoom. The first question is, if we have an employee who had to pay out of pocket for prescriptions, even though they received the prescription card from TASB, do we forward the receipt to you, or what is the process for reimbursement to the adjuster?
Yes, that is correct. You can forward that information over to the adjuster and it will be reviewed as far as the reimbursement. I don't want to guarantee that everything gets paid because it just depends on the medication that they're getting and what's related to the injury. But yes, send over the information to the adjuster. We do have these scenarios come up on weekends where people they don't have their card, they don't have access to a card. So yes, please send that information to your adjuster and they'll review it. Great.
The next question was, can any
think he's
claims
gonna read it,
older than
Rod.
5 years be purged with the exception of the first report of injury, or can we purge the entire file? We have claims that an
So-
employee's wanted to open from 2015, just want to make sure we keep the correct records.
That's a good question. So first of all, I want to clarify something. In your record keeping, you should have two things, okay? The first thing is known as the record of injuries. That's what I was just telling you. An incident occurs, you create the record, you put it in a folder labeled 2023 workers' comp injuries. Just the first report. That is your record of injuries that the state requires you to keep, right? So if they ask for it, you're going to send them that folder. So you have 2023, have one for every year, purge it on the 6th year, okay? Then when you create that first report of injury, that record, you will create a separate folder for John Doe. And that's where you're going to drop all of the information in, right? That's his ongoing folder. But he's still over here in the record of injuries. Two different things. So to answer your question, number one, if you do have a folder of information on that person, including all of the medical reports and whatnot, you're not required unless you're self-insured and that's the official claim file, but you can purge that one whenever. You keep your record of injuries for 5 years. The other ones, those, I would always suggest you hold those as long as they are open and active. The official, your file with everything.
So there's no record retention on the file?
So her question was, there's no record retention on the file. I want to be very clear. Your carrier is the holder of the official record. As an employer, your job is to keep the first report of injury for 5 years in a record of injuries, okay? So if you're self-insured, you want to seek clarification on my answering that question, okay? Only if you have a carrier who is holding the official folder, the official file.
And if you do have somebody that comes back from 2015 and they do want to treat, send them over to TASB. If you're with TASB, we'll look at for the record and get them the information they need.
Okay, so
The most important question is, how do you address the shoes? Like on your opening PowerPoint, you have a lady with a high heel, and that seems to be one comment people are not wearing.
okay, so her question is, how do we answer the shoes? Oh my God, I love that question. Okay, how do we answer the shoes? You tell your employees don't wear flip-flops, and they came to work and they tripped and fell in flip-flops, okay? Please do not show them your policy that said there will be no flip-flops, go suffer in silence over there. No, you're gonna say, we're turning this over, here's a workers' comp. Jennifer, please deal with this. Now, you are my employee. We have a company policy on this, and then you're going to deal with company policy and your employee as you would normally. And she will determine whether or not it's covered and whether or not it's paid. But I'm going to tell you, willful, wanton stupidity is never going to be a reason to deny a claim.
Can we take it a step further? And I'll have a mic.
Okay, I'll repeat back.
So can we take it away? Can we go further into the parking lot? Not necessarily shoes, or it could be a combination of extravagant shoes, but I drive one of those huge pickups and I need like 2 steps to climb into the truck. So I'm parking at my employer's side parking lot. I'm coming down and I fall because the car was too high for me and the shoes were not proper.
So you hear what you're saying. Listen to what you're saying. You're trying to say whether or not, you're trying to answer, is it covered? That is not your issue. That's hers. Now, you see someone doing something unsafe. That is another thing. And I think Mike stepped out, dadgummit. But anyway, we have risk solutions people whose job is to keep me unemployed. Okay. They want to prevent injuries. So I see you getting out your car and I'm like, I have a concern here. Okay. You're getting on my property and that doesn't look safe. You're addressing that as you normally would as an employer. Okay. But you can't, the fact that they hurt themselves doing this is not your job. That's hers. So be clear. And
But
this
we do
happens
need
a lot.
that information. We need that information whenever we're investigating, because that can make a difference. I won't say that they'll be denied, but I will tell you that that will make a difference.
When you say we need that information, do you ask them like to send you pictures of the vehicle?
Oh, we'll ask you to send, and this is
Oh, yeah.
the queen of the videos.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have parking lot videos, we're going to ask for those videos. Do you have a video of the incident? Send it in to us, because I cannot tell you how many times someone has said they were injured and we get a copy of the video and nothing has happened. And then we deny the claim and tell them that we had a copy of the video and everybody goes away in silence. Nobody wants to challenge anything. So yes, the video makes a lot of bus video, parking lot video, stairwell video, whatever you have that you can send to us, we'll take it.
So you want to stop. Hopefully they reported it timely so that you can stop and procure all of these videos and this information, because you want it as clean as possible and as immediately as possible. Because somebody will tell me, okay, well, I don't have a video wait, we had one the other day about the school was filthy. She said she had mold from the school. And they were like, well, we don't have any pictures of before because we had it cleaned afterwards. I'm like, well, I don't care what the situation was afterwards. That is not going to help us. We know that there will no longer be a problem, but I needed pictures of what existed before or during the incident. So those are all good questions. Okay, I'm reading through this. That was it? That's all of our questions?
The shoes was like critical.
Okay, what time do you need us off the, you've had quite enough and y'all want to go eat?
No, they're gonna eat here.
Oh, I don't care. When y'all had enough. Okay, no other questions.
Yes,
Let's go.
I
Yes,
have a
we do.
follow-up. I have a follow-up
Yeah.
question to the improper footwear.
Yeah.
Can we discipline the employer based on our written regulations? At the same time,
Yes.
she's filing for workers' comp.
So I'm going to tell you, this is where I am going to follow my own advice and I'm going to stay in my lane. I know enough about HR to get you to the HR services doorstep and say, could you please advise them on how to counsel and work with their employee? I'm going to handle the workers' comp issues, but let me just say this, you do need to be aware of it, but you still can't, you still work with your employee as you normally would, because policy was not followed, because procedures were inappropriate. But I would always refer you to HR services to help guide you in the appropriate way of handling those things.
They're a good group of people and they get questions like that every day.
Yeah.
So they can walk you through those scenarios. And also another option would be your internal legal reps, legal attorneys that you can ask those questions to as well.
Okay, so let's see how well you guys did. Report or not, employee says they're suffering from asthma due to mold in the classroom. All right, very good. It's definitely a report.
Employee asks if you have allergy medicine because they are suffering from allergies.
Give them
Report
the
or not.
medication and move on. Okay, don't ask. So that's a no report.
Employee walking to the car after clocking out and tripped in the parking lot.
All right, excellent. If it's across the street, it's not your parking lot, I don't care. But if it's your parking lot, I care.
I care because that could make a difference on whether we accept the claim or not. So definitely report that and let them know they were not on our parking lot whenever that happened.
Which we basically just answered this question. Would it be covered? After 3 million questions, we'll figure it out. But more than likely, if it's in your parking lot, it will be covered. Whole entrance exit thing.
Employee taken from campus by ambulance.
At least call and walk through the process with us. And so we can determine whether or not, and 99% of the time, they're going to ask you for a report.
But don't stop the ambulance and have them fill out paperwork. Call us first. Employee was in an accident on the way to work and reports to you that it's a workers' comp injury. Report or not.
They're coming from home or they're coming from
This is a trick question.
work related, like they stop at a campus.
See what she did? See what she did? She asked questions. That wasn't her job. And that's what we all did. What's the part of this sentence? What's the key in the sentence? No, stop. You don't need this is it. You don't need anything but this slide. What's the problem? He reported to you it's a work comp injury. This actually happened about a couple of months back. That employee walked in and said, I got hurt, it's covered. His own personal car on the way to work. Was it covered? Absolutely not. But that wasn't your job. You can't stop it. You definitely want her to. Because otherwise, if he's crazy enough to push it on to the the state, before you can get the paperwork filed, we got a problem. But you are all, and y'all, I'm telling you something. I was a manager. I was a claims manager. I made mistakes with my own employees because I acted as a claims person when I managed them. I forgot sometimes. I don't have the right to tell them things. So what you are doing is human nature. It's what we all do. And I myself have done everything you're doing currently. So trust me, I understand.
Employee mentions they hurt their back at work last school year, but didn't want to report because it's too late.
Excellent.
My employee has been out on light duty for a year. What should I do?
Congratulate them on their new job. I put this up because this is a perfect example about why you should all be working together. Modified duty is temporary. At some point, it's going to be very difficult to prove it's not an ADA issue. So you offer modified duty, you always try and work with it. But someone's got to be monitoring, saying, okay, you've reached 60 days, you've reached 30 days on modified duty. I'm going to need you to go home, recover, and then let us know when you're fully released. But you can't keep it going. And actually, y'all, this was nice. The question was, he's been on modified duty for 7 years. The file had been closed. He had been released to full duty, but nobody was talking. No one knew the supervisor was letting it go on. See, the supervisor one day, furious, called and said, how long does this have to happen? And administration was like, what? He's what? He's on modified duty. We don't know about this. So then we had to go pull our file, which was old and closed and moldy. Thank you very much. So keep those conversations going. It's not what administration knows. I tell y'all, what keeps me up at night is what your campuses are doing. And that's because they aren't properly trained. And let me just say this, you've heard a lot of stuff today and you're kind of probably feeling a little nauseated, thinking about things that you've done. You're like, oh gosh. So just start today with good practices and procedures. Go forward. So, and because let me just say this, the net is cast very wide. It's very difficult. But the one time you get caught and you become the cautionary tale, it is painful and very, very expensive. So that's your goal, practices and procedures. So after a year or 7, you probably have an ADA issue. So make sure you're monitoring that modified duty is a temporary situation. No further questions? You guys are awesome. We are honored. I love to come to the Valley, but y'all, you just put the cherry on the pie on the, you guys are wonderful. So thank you very much for having us
Thank you so much for
today.
joining us today. Yes.
We do. Can the back row please stand up and introduce yourselves? Yeah, we travel in packs. Well, we were so excited about coming down to the Valley. I literally sent an invitation to everyone, and Region 1 was like, if she sends me one more name to add.
It's because we really all do love coming down here. So my name is Krista Roberts. I'm a claims manager with Jennifer Radis. And I love coming down. I get to visit a lot of the districts. My team actually handles most of the districts for TASB in the Valley. So we got to kind of go out and visit some members yesterday and
regions and colleges.
Yes, and
members.
regions, all of them. Yeah, well, yes. So just as Laura said, you guys are always awesome, welcoming, and we really appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Diana Peña. I'm an adjuster 3. I work right under Krista. I actually just started. So I'm excited. I'll be helping adjust a lot of the members here in the Valley.
And Diana's actually based out of the Valley. So that's one of the important things was we really felt very strongly about having someone local, someone close to you guys, which we do have Jesse Villarreal in Harlingen, who has worked with me for forever. And also joining us today was Mike Mendiola, who unfortunately had to step out. He is your risk solutions consultant in this area. And he is an excellent source of what is available to you in safety training, in prevention and whatnot. So you can always contact us. We'll get you Mike's contact as well. Thank you all for your time. It has been our pleasure.
Thank you.